Frank's heart was heavy with regret as he made his way home. He couldn't shake off the feeling that he had just dodged a bullet. Eugenia may have been beautiful and charming, but there was something about her that just didn't sit right with him. He knew that he needed to stay away from her, but a part of him couldn't help but wonder what could have been. Over the next few days, Eugenia bombarded Frank with calls and messages, trying to convince him to give her another chance. She promised that things would be different this time, that she would show him just how much she cared for him. Frank tried to ignore her, but she was persistent, and eventually, he found himself agreeing to meet her again. The second date was just as perfect as the first, but this time, Frank was on high alert. He listened carefully to everything Eugenia said, trying to spot any signs of deceit or manipulation. But she was good, too good. She had an answer for everything, and Frank found himself slowly being drawn back into her web. As the night drew to a close, Eugenia suggested that they take a walk in the park. Frank was hesitant at first, but eventually, he agreed. It was a beautiful night, and the stars were out in full force. Eugenia was walking close to him, her hand in his, and for a moment, everything seemed perfect. But then she stopped, and turned to face him. Her eyes were filled with a mixture of sadness and desperation. "Frank," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I need your help." Frank felt a knot form in his stomach. He had a feeling he knew where this was going. "What do you need my help with?" he asked, trying to keep his tone neutral. Eugenia took a deep breath. "I'm in trouble," she said, her eyes welling up with tears. "My ex-boyfriend, he's been threatening me. He's been following me around, and I'm scared." Frank's heart sank. He had a feeling that Eugenia was lying, but he couldn't ignore the fact that she looked genuinely scared. "What can I do to help?" he asked. Eugenia looked up at him, her eyes pleading. "Can I stay with you for a few days?" she asked. "Just until I figure things out." Frank hesitated for a moment, but then he nodded. "Of course," he said. "You can stay with me." As they made their way back to Frank's apartment, he couldn't help but feel like he was walking into a trap. But he pushed those thoughts to the back of his mind, telling himself that he was just being paranoid. Eugenia was just a scared girl in need of help. What could possibly go wrong? Eugenia moved in with Frank and things seemed to be going well for the first few days. She was quiet and kept to herself most of the time, which suited Frank just fine. He was happy to have someone around to help pay the rent and bills. But things soon took a turn for the worse. Eugenia started to become more and more demanding, asking for money for this and that, and insisting on going out to expensive restaurants and clubs. Frank started to realize that she was using him for his money, just like all the other women before her. He tried to confront her about it, but she just brushed him off and told him that he didn't understand her needs. Frank knew that he needed to get rid of her, but he didn't know how. He had grown attached to her in some strange way, and the thought of kicking her out made him feel guilty. One night, Eugenia came home drunk and started to make a scene. She yelled and screamed at Frank, accusing him of not loving her and not caring about her. Frank tried to calm her down, but she just wouldn't listen. Finally, he snapped and told her that he had had enough. He told her to pack her bags and leave. Eugenia was shocked at first, but then she started to cry. She told Frank that she loved him and that she couldn't imagine her life without him. Frank felt a pang of guilt, but he knew that he had to be strong. He helped her pack her bags and walked her to the door. As she left, Eugenia turned around and gave him a sad smile. "You'll regret this," she said. "You'll see." Frank watched her walk away, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. He knew that he had made the right decision, but he couldn't help but wonder if he had let another good woman slip through his fingers. But he pushed those thoughts aside and reminded himself that he was better off alone. He had learned that sometimes, the biggest risks were the ones that weren't worth taking. He was done with women and their manipulative ways. From now on, he would focus on himself and his own happiness. And with that thought in mind, he closed the door and walked back into his apartment, ready to start a new chapter in his life.